Hey, what is up guys? Hope y'all enjoyed that little intro. We had a ton of fun making it, but I'm kind of new to the whole filmmaking thing, so it's probably not as nice and polished as it could be, but I promise I'm working on it. Okay, so first things first, this thing is a fun machine, and I've actually enjoyed my time with the Boosted Mini X a ton, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. And we'll get into that in a sec, but first we gotta talk a little business. So as you may have heard, Boosted is dead. I don't think anyone really saw it coming, but it's true. And it's especially sad for people who are fans of Boosted and were still thinking about getting one. But there is still a glimmer of hope because a company in San Francisco recently bought all of Boosted's remaining inventory and is now selling it for the same prices as before. The company has now rebranded itself as Boosted USA, not to be confused with the old Boosted company though. And my understanding is that they got enough product and parts to help with servicing the boards for years to come. So if you buy a board from them, you won't just be left without a warranty. But there is still some bad news for older Boosted customers. Because Boosted USA is a completely different entity from Boosted, they didn't receive any of the money from the original sale of boards prior to the downfall of Boosted. And therefore, if you bought your Boosted board before Boosted went down, Boosted USA will not be able to honor the warranty on your old board. They will, however, try to help out in whatever way they can, like helping you diagnose a problem on your board and selling some replacement parts that you may need. I actually bought my board before Boosted went under, so I actually no longer have a warranty on my board, but I've come to terms with it and I'm just glad to know that there's still somewhere I can turn in case I need some replacement parts or something like that. And just a little disclaimer, I am not a spokesperson for the company and I'm not affiliated with them in any way. So you should still do your own research if this is an important issue for you. I just wanted to give kind of a general overview of the situation. So with that out of the way, let's get into the review. I've been using the Boosted Mini X in a variety of situations in all kinds of conditions, mainly for commuting to and from class, but also lately just to get outside and get some fresh air. And just because I know everyone loves specs, here they are. The Boosted Mini X has a range of up to 14 miles, top speed of 20 miles per hour, can climb hill grades of up to 20%, and has regenerative braking. It also comes with a standard boosted remote, deep dish deck, gray 80mm wheels, and weighs about 17 pounds in all. Okay, so with that out of the way, just a little background on me. I've never ridden a skateboard before getting this, and the closest thing I've done to it is probably going snowboarding, maybe like 4 times in my entire life. But you'll be really surprised at how fast the learning curve is for this board. And it's partially because the Mini comes with 3 riding modes: Beginner, Eco, and Pro. Basically in each riding mode, the board's acceleration and top speed will get altered a little bit, with Beginner being the slowest and Pro being the fastest. And in Pro mode, this thing has a surprising amount of torque, so it will throw you off if you aren't used to it. So I highly recommend just putting your pride aside and using beginner mode if you haven't ridden an electric skateboard before. So I started in beginner mode when I first got it, but after only about 15 to 30 minutes of riding, I was already pretty comfortable with it and I started using it in pro mode. And like I said, I have little to no skateboarding experience, but this is actually really easy because I think probably the hardest part about learning to skateboard, at least in the beginning, is taking your foot off the board and pushing and just balancing during that whole process. But with an electric skateboard, all you have to do is push the throttle and it does all the pushing for you. So all you have to worry about at that point is steering. So if you've never ridden a skateboard like me and you're just worried about it being too hard or just not being able to learn it quickly, don't be. It's actually really easy, and I'm confident that anybody can do it. And once you get used to riding this board, you'll find that it's actually very impressive in power. And it's thanks to the dual belt-driven motor system that's powering the whole thing. And just a little quick note about the belt-driven motors, they're really loud. So when you start picking up some speed, these things really start to scream, and people will start to notice and look at you. I have heard it being justified as a safety feature though, just so people can know that you're there and they know to watch out so they don't get hit. And I think that's totally valid. But if you want to keep a low profile and not have everyone looking at you while you ride around, you might want to look into getting something a little quieter, like a board with hub motors instead of the belt-driven ones. I'm not sure exactly what the 0 to 60 time is on this thing, but it definitely feels quick off the line. It's also rated to go up a 20% hill grade, which basically means that the hill goes up 1 foot for every 5 feet of horizontal distance. And in the real world, I found it to be more than enough. A lot of the hills that I used to struggle on with my bike are just handled with ease on the boosted board. And I've mainly used this in a town in the Appalachian Mountains, so I've had my fair share of hills to test it on. And although the acceleration and power of the board were really impressive, I do wish that the board had a bit of a higher speed. The board is rated for a top speed of 20 miles per hour, which is plenty of fast for just cruising around, but sometimes in my commutes, I actually have to go into traffic lanes to make a turn or something like that. And in those cases, 20 miles per hour just feels a little bit slow, and I'll hold up traffic if I'm in the lane, so I always feel bad and people will start honking at me. I think if the top speed was around 25 to 30 miles per hour, let's say, it would be much more dangerous, yes, but I think it would also be much more useful as a commuting tool. And I think that the board has the power to do it, but it's just limited by software to max out at a certain RPM. Because when you put bigger wheels on it, it can actually go faster, due to the wheels having a larger circumference. But then again, I could be wrong, and it could just be an engineering choice for some reason, and I'm just not really sure. Anyway, speaking of the wheels, you may have noticed that I changed the stock wheels out for a different set. The one I've got on here are called the Orangutan Kawamas. I'll link them in the description if you're interested, but basically, there are 2 reasons that I wanted to change out the stock wheels in the first place. The new wheels are slightly larger at 85mm in diameter compared to the 80mm of the originals, and this increases the top speed by a whopping 1 mile per hour. But seriously, having larger wheels also just helps with getting over bumps and cracks. Second, the wheels are made out of a slightly softer compound, which helps with ride quality, and that was probably my biggest complaint about the board. I'm sure it's a little bit better on their longboards just because they have those long flexible decks, but since this board is so stiff and rigid, you can feel all the vibrations from the board come through into your feet. And unless you live in an area with absolutely perfect roads, your feet will probably start to feel a little numb after a while, and eventually they'll start to hurt. The new wheels help a little bit, but it's still a pretty harsh ride overall. I will say though that the overall build quality of the boosted board is definitely top notch. I think that the overall design and the fit and finish are really great. The remote, I think, is especially well designed. It fits really nice in the hands, and using it is extremely easy and intuitive. All you have to do is press the trigger to activate the board, and then just turn the wheel forward to go forward and then backwards to brake or reverse. The remote also has a button on the bottom that you can press to view your remaining battery life, which comes in really handy. And it can also change modes, which is pretty handy as well. And the brakes on the board are regenerative, so as you brake, the battery will start to recharge a bit. And they have pretty decent stopping power, but I do wish that they have a little bit more. Like, most of the time they're enough, but if you're surprised by something like a car pulling out of a driveway or someone jumping in your way for some reason, you'll actually need a pretty significant distance to stop. I also wish that this board had the option to have a brake and hold feature. So basically right now how the board works is once you're braking and come to a complete stop, the board will immediately start going in reverse. There's no option to just stop and stay where you are. So let's say you're waiting at a traffic light and you're on an incline and you just want to stay in the same place until there's a green light. You would just have to kind of balance just the right amount of force on the throttle to stay still. And having an option just to stop and lock the wheels would be really helpful in that situation. So Boosted claims that this board has a range of 14 miles, but it's not entirely true. The 14 miles is only if you ride in eco mode, which really limits the top speed and acceleration of the board. And I honestly doubt that anyone getting this board will actually keep it in eco mode for very long. If you're using it in expert mode, like I assume most people will, you'll get closer to 8 or 9 miles. But for me, it actually wasn't that big of a deal because it was enough for my use. I found that the limiting factor for how long I could ride wasn't really the range of the battery, but it was actually my feet starting to hurt a lot from the vibrations of the road. But then again, I could just be a big baby, and if your feet aren't as sensitive as mine to vibrations, it might not actually be a problem for you. Although the short deck of the Mini does lead to a harsher ride quality, it does allow for sharper turns and the addition of a kicktail. Having it comes in super handy for tighter corners, but I'd still say it's really hard to use just because the board is so heavy. But I'm sure with practice you could get pretty good with it. There's also a small plastic piece under the kicktail which just protects the deck from scratches, which I think is just a really thoughtful addition. Having the shorter deck also means you can carry and store it more easily. And yes, I know I'm mall grabbing, but I found it to be the best and easiest way to carry it, given its weight of 17 pounds. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but after you carry it for any kind of significant distance, you really start to feel it, and these things were definitely meant to be ridden and not carried. So overall, this is a really nice polished product, and I only have a few minor gripes about it. I wish it was a little faster, I wish it had a real brake, I wish the ride quality was a little smoother, and I didn't really mention this earlier, but I kind of wish there was somewhere to store the remote on the board when you aren't using it, because I forget it a lot, and it's always a bummer when I want to ride and I can't find the remote. But just the amount of fun that you can have on this thing is amazing. And just being able to cruise around on the board at 20 miles per hour, it just kind of feels like you're flying, and I really can't emphasize how much fun it is to ride. Like, before getting the boosted board, I rarely ever went outside. But after getting this, I go outside to ride almost every day. And if you're a student, this is also a great tool for commuting to and from classes, assuming you live pretty close. Does it mean you won't have to pay for parking? And also, if you normally take the bus, you won't have to worry about being late for it anymore and missing it. So, win-win situation. So I hope this review has been helpful to anyone considering getting a boosted board. It's a huge bummer that Boosted went under because I actually really like them as a company, and I was really excited to see what else they would come out with. But at least there's still somewhere to get them, and I also heard that Lime, the company that does the scooters, recently bought all of Boosted's patents. So who knows, maybe we'll see more Boosted's products in the future, just under a different name. Anyways, thanks for watching guys, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.